Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Gibson Show Shorts. And we're joined by Kenny again from TENSTAR ahead of CL. And Kenny, it's been the year of TENSTAR so far. You know, you can rumble, check. MPL, check. You can too, check. CL qualification secured. You're bound to be pretty happy with how the year went, but I know this is the big one for you, isn't it? Doing well in CL.
Yeah, I think expectations run high externally from the outside world, but internally we hit our goal. We made CL when we rebuilt with Yonkers and Oxo after split one of MPL. We all said our goal is make CL, and we've done that. And obviously, we have aspirations of doing very well, but we have no pressure on us. I believe, and the team believes, like we don't feel pressure from the outside world. It doesn't matter what people think of us, whether we're going to win every game or lose every game. We'll play the exact same as we've seen. Like, we had the pressure of qualifying for CL. We literally were in 6th place after first split of MPL. So actually qualifying for CL was probably the most pressured environment we've been in, and then we won every game in the season, nine game win streak. So yeah, the aspirations are high.
Yeah, I think the only team in MPL that was as close to being as hot in the second split as you was probably the ex-Coalesce roster. They were one that kind of picked up the form massively in that second split as well. But I think the big thing about TENSTAR, and you look at how the roster has evolved since the start of the year. You know, you can rumble, you had Leader in there, you had Savage in there. Things have obviously changed quite a bit. You've brought in Zanoxo, who came over from the X-Ovation roster. You know, you bring in Yonka, who's got absolute tons of experience as well. So I think the one thing you've got going is recruitment has gone pretty well. I suppose the question is, how do you think you've managed to get the recruitment so right for this team?
I think I personally, obviously the players are the ones that their opinion means the most to me. They're the ones going to be playing with the new player. I just see it from an outside perspective, so they have their own views on what makes a good player. But I think from my perspective, I understand the criteria that is needed and that I want inside of a player. And players are good, but they might not fit what specifically I want in terms of outside the game. Like, we do as much work outside the game as we do inside the game and practicing. So there's got to be a level of commitment in that regard. And I think that that is what has set us apart from Split 1 and Split 2, and now being viewed as one of the top contenders for CL, is how much we make what's the words? We time is valuable, and we make the best use of our time in terms of understanding where things have gone wrong, things have gone right, and then tweaking and changing things. That's where we really make our time valuable. That's what I was looking for. Valuable. Yeah. Valuable to actually improve, not just scrim without a purpose, not just, okay, scrim's done, time to go off and play FIFA or whatever. It's a hard focus on improvement every day.
Yeah. So let's get to know the team a little bit then, for the people who may not know the team or the people who kind of know it already. Let's talk through the current roster and tell everybody at home something about every player, whether it be about their game style or whether you want to throw them on the bus and tell them something embarrassing about them. You know, this is your chance to have a little say about the guys on the team. Look, everyone knows it's a bit of fun, so why don't you talk us through that roster?
All right, well, I'll start with from oldest to newest. So person I've been teaming with longest is Azza. I said it in my last interview, I think he's one of the most underrated players in T2 right now. And he's an all-rounder. If you have those what they called, you have those like traits on FIFA where you're like a free kick specialist, but you've got the all-rounder or the box to box. Azza does everything. So that's Azza. Then Jegs the most mechanically skilled player in EU apart from Spoit, hands down.
I like it.
Savage has said the same, so I've got backing in that that. It's early morning. I can't think of words today. In that opinion, then who's next? Who do we get in next? Then Yonka. He's an idiot, to be fair. he is just an idiot. I've never laughed so much at someone's stupidity, but he's funny, and it just makes the team environment really good when you get a bit of camaraderie around people being how they are. But he's outside of the game extremely driven, and he motivates even myself and the rest of the team to be able to work hard, because he has the drive from leaving T1. When he first came back into the team, he said that I want to make it back to EUL, and that's my goal. And it's very evident and very visible that that's what he wants to do, and he wants to work as hard as he can for it. So it elevates everyone in the team around that. Zanoxo, he's another idiot, to be fair. He's very funny, very down to earth as well. I love Justin. He's another person who can just pull rounds based off of gun skill, and yeah, he's got the experience with Yonka of already playing in Challenge League where the rest of us haven't. So that's going to obviously help us. And then YZM, probably what I would call the perfect leader replacement. He clutches. And he's a big game player. Wow, in MPL, what a big game player. That's one of the things that when we went down to our final two for replacing leader, we had obviously our shortlist, and we took it down to 2 players. One thing that maybe edged it a bit for me was that typically for Victus, YZN was terrible against bad teams. Throughout MPL, I didn't think he had that great stats. But then when Victus played big teams in CL quals, they played Games Without Borders quals against like T1 teams. He had phenomenal stats, and that kind of signaled to me that against good teams, and when the pressure's on and the stakes are high, he delivers, and you can count on him. And that's what you need from a site player, an anchor. And it's ideally what I wanted to replace leader. I wanted someone you could depend on, because we could always depend on leader. And when you have someone that you can always fall back on, you can trust, it makes everything more fluid in Siege. So that's my team.
Yeah, well, he had a big impact in the MPL final against Heroic on Cafe in particular. I know he had a lot to do with that win.
Big impact is an understatement, I think.
Yeah, but when you're looking at the likes of that move too, you're stealing YZN away from Victus, who everybody historically says that TENSTAR have got this big rivalry with, and you know it's strengthened you guys. You could say it's weakened them as well. I think going into CL, results are what matter. You know, the friendships kind of go out the window as far as like orgs getting on with each other. It's all about that final result. So let's now have a look at the other teams in your group. So if you're watching this from home, you're inside Group D. You've got Makers from Italy, M&M Academy, and Les Pichichi, who just about made it in as well. You know, they're in that same boat as the ex-Coalesce roster, where they found out very last minute that they had made it in after the disappointment of thinking they weren't in. In your roster, we'll go team by team. So we'll look at the champions of Italy first. What are your thoughts on Makers, and, you know, how you think you'll face up against them?
One thing that not many people know is that they no longer play with Sasha, who was their long-standing hard support. So kind of the core that qualified for 6 Invitational way back in, was it 2020 or 2021? One of the two.
COVID kind of makes you forget how long ago things were, doesn't it?
It's strange. It's like a complete abyss between now and old. So when they qualified for 6 Invitational, they had Scato, Lolo, Acqui, Gemini, and Sasha. Scato left over a year ago, and then Sasha most recently, I don't know what happened, but is not on the team anymore. So they've they now only have 3 players from that original killer squad. And their new player David is very new, so I think they won't be as consistent as they've previously been, but they still are scary as ever. Like Gemini, Lolo, and Acqui, they could pull out 20 kills against any team in EU on their day. Watching Quick's interview, he's very right. It's either they drop 20 kills or because they're inconsistent in what they do, it's very hit or miss. So we'll see what turns up. I think Makers will definitely be a hard challenge. Like you can't set anything less with a team with Acqui, Lolo, and Gemini. But I think their team hinges on whether the 2 newbies, Indora and David, can compete at this level, because neither of them have played at this level. I know even when I was in T4, I was playing games against Dora, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, well, we need to explore how he gets on, over the course of... I'm sorry, that pun is terrible. I'm going to leave it at that. But, at a team... a team like Makers, where they can go really, really hot or really cold, the best of 1 format... Do you think that favors teams like that, or do you think it makes it a little bit easier?
Well, it favors them if they're hot, but it really doesn't if they're... Well, to be fair, I think in all, it does favor them, because if they're cold for best of 3, they're just going to get battered for 2 maps rather than 1 map. But in a best of 1, if they're hot and they come out the gates gunning, then you lose the first 2-3 rounds, you're already in a massive deficit and the game's already away from you as the opposition. So I think it definitely does favour them. I think generally they have a smaller map pool than most teams, so that does favour them in best of 1s over best of 3s. So we'll see how they fare. I think our group will be very interesting, along with Group A, in my opinion. I think we're the most interesting groups.
Yeah, well, Quick definitely made Group A a little bit more interesting with his interview last night. So then we're looking at M&M Academy, a team that you know very well. You played against them and you can do it. You played against them and you can rumble. Pretty much all the players. They did make a couple of changes. They brought in Wild, who's performed pretty well for them as well. Those 2 changes have seemed to have actually turned M&M Academy into like an average tier 3 side and do a pretty good team now. What do you think about their chances?
I wouldn't say average tier 3. I would say terrible tier 3. They lost their spot to Coalesce when they had like a 11-point advantage going to split 2. But yeah, their 2 new signings obviously have changed their fortunes around. I don't know where they've come from, but obviously what they've changed and how they've changed has really elevated them. I wouldn't say I actually know much about them, because they just sprung out of nowhere in the CL quals, in second quals, and then when we played them in the final, I had no idea how they would play. I had nothing to go off to prepare the team, even just if it was, they like these maps and they ban these operators. I had generally nothing to go off, because none of their games were streamed. All I had to go off was scores, and that was it. So they were a very unknown factor. Obviously, now that we've played them and they've played the 3rd quals and a lot of their games are streamed because they were a more notable team, I have a better understanding of them, and I think that'll make things nicer for me in terms of obviously preparation and just understanding the works of a team. I think one thing that is works in our favor, we're very flexible, and like depending on how a team plays, we can change how we play to counter it. So it's one thing that when we have that understanding, things are a lot more fluid.
Yeah, I think with them as well, when our carry is on one of his days, he can be an absolute difference maker for that side. And I think a lot of people are happy for Nerf to have a good side around him as well, because Nerf's a player that I think a lot of people think highly of. He's pretty good at what he does. So M&M Academy I'm interested in. And then finally, we have the team that, as I said, like ex-Coalesce, who I think are going under job seekers now. They thought that they made it, and then they needed a couple of things to go their way, and then almost all the things they needed to go their way went their way but then they found themselves on the outside looking in. But lo and behold, they got a gift from above. They've made it into CL thanks to, the Hellraisers and ex-Heroic teams not being in CL this time around. Do you see them as a bit of a dark horse as well going into this?
They have the players. I'll say that. They have Jax, who was one of the highest rated players from last year's Challenger League when he was in Death Row. His stats and his entry stats were phenomenal, and it was challenging. I think he was the second highest rated below Usus and Exodus. I want to say, don't quote me on it, but he was highly rated. So he's a player to watch. The rest of them, they're good. They've been around T3 for a while, and they've been in various teams, and they've flip-flopped around. I think that what I said about M&M Academy rings true for Les Pichichi, because now I don't really know how they play. So they are a dark horse. Like with M&M, it was an advantage and a positive that now I understand how they play. But Les Pichichi, I don't really know. None of their games were really streamed. They just came out of nowhere. So it will be intriguing. I think that will be a game where we just focus on ourselves, because generally we should be a higher caliber team than them. But best of ones, anything can happen. And I will reiterate that for the length of time. Literally anything can happen in best of ones. We could lose all 6 of our best of ones and be out in groups. Just true. Well, just the way the cookie crumbles.
I'm sure the TENSTAR fans definitely hope that's not the way it goes. So we've spoke a little bit about your group. We've got maybe a couple of minutes left, so we'll talk on some of the other groups that are taking part. So we'll start. I'm going to leave Group A to last. We'll, after everything Quick said, we'll talk about that one last. So we'll talk about Group B first, and Activity, Lamb Party, Hotel, Ovation, and Death Row. What are your thoughts on that group, and who do you think will be the 2 teams to make it through?
Quick was very sarcastic about it. I will just be blunt. I think it is a terrible group. However, 2 teams have to make it out, and I think that Death Row are hot off qualifier 3, and I think they generally have better players than the rest. And I think Lamb Party Hotel will be the second seed out of that group. People shouldn't sleep on Lamb Party Hotel. I do think, well, they haven't been in action for like three months now. V4 ended at like the first week of August, so they've been out of action for a while. But obviously that means that they have been able to practice and do a lot with. You can do a lot in 3 months of Siege. So they're a dark horse, and I think they have the players to be able to surprise people, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are interested in seeing how these teams that come from regions other than France, Germany, and MPL do, because everyone's eyes are going to be instantly drawn to those teams just because of, the players that have made the jump into Tier 1 lately. So teams like them, Viali Patone's another one, Rebels, they're teams that I think a lot of people are very interested in seeing. So we'll move on to Group C, and this group is one that kind of really stands out as well. You have Ascend, who of course were 3-2-1 Sked during the Nationals. You've got Wild in there, who everybody knows what they're about at this stage. Viperio 86, and of course Job Seekers or ex-Coalesce. What are your thoughts on that group, and do you kind of agree with some of the things that maybe Quick was saying about that group, or do you think it's going to be a really hotly contested one?
I agree. 4 months ago, it would have been the best Group C I was ever seen, excluding Coalesce. But it's a really hard one, because Wild should get first seed, even if they have internal troubles. They should get first seed no matter what. The rest, the caliber of the other 3 teams is not as good as Wild. Ascend is a completely different team to 3-2-1 Sked. I think that we cannot compare 3-2-1 Sked's success, although in the French League finals they did take Wolves to 2 overtimes in the grand final. So I think that there's merit to that performance against Wolves. I think it should be those 2. 86 I don't think are strong anymore. They've really been hurt by players leaving. And Coalesce I think Coalesce actually will surprise in a couple of best of ones, but I don't think they will have the consistency to make it out of groups. I think they'll maybe win two best of ones against like Ascend and 86, maybe beat 86 in both best of ones in those head-to-heads, but I don't think they'll have the consistency to beat Wild in either best of ones or take down Ascend twice. I think how well Ascend fare against Wild actually might be the difference maker between Ascend and Coalesce, but yeah, it should be Ascend and Wild.
Yeah, I think everyone's going to be distracted by the move that Ascend made. Obviously, a player going on to bigger and better things, but when you look at the players they've brought in, it changes how the roster plays, but they've still brought in some very talented players. So they are going to be a very good team, but just for different reasons, as you kind of pointed out. So now we're going to jump into Group A, the one that we kind of left for last, because this is one that Quick had a lot to say about. Victus, Rebels, J-Lings, and Viali Petoni. What are your thoughts on that one? Because it does look on paper like a very strong group.
Yeah, I think with the age of Group C not being as good as the teams used to be, I think that Group A is definitely like the highlight group with Rebels changes now that they're public. I couldn't really say it previously because the changes weren't public, but Croxon and Thunder, very good upgrades for them, in my opinion. I think that makes them, that takes them from being definitely going out in groups to very hard to call. I think that Victus will make it out. I think the second spot will be between Rebels and J-Lings. Depends which team is more consistent. I think both Rebels and J-Lings have very inconsistent play styles. They have players that are literally the definitions of 50-50 players. So it is really about who turns up on the day. Draw can turn up and drop 18 kills. However, he could also turn up and drop 4. I think Draw is a very good player. I just think his play style is extremely inconsistent. So it depends, as well as with Croxon, how well he can perform at this level with his incredible stats in Spanish Nats, if he is hot or he is not. I actually think that head-to-head will decide who goes through second, and it'll be the entry battle between Croxon and Draw. We'll see.
Looking forward to it, I really am. Well, look, that kind of runs the end of the end of the show, and I suppose last thing before we wrap up is anything you want to say to any of the other players, orgs, viewers, fans that are watching this that'll be in some way involved with CL?
Tune into all the games because they're going to be exciting. CL only happens once a year for now. We don't know what's happening next year. CL, I think, arguably can sometimes be more interesting than EUL because the games can be a little more scrappy, a little less one-sided, and the standard of Siege is still up there. Like you've seen the Wild, us with MPL finals, we can beat T1 teams. Like the standard is very close to EUL. The EUL teams are just that tab more consistent with how they play. So it'll be good Siege all around. Good luck to all the teams. I know obviously everyone was kind of devastated with how little time we had to prepare, so it really favors the teams who are hot and best of ones. Bloody hell.
Yeah.
Have fun.
It's going to be fun. Well, guys, as Kenny said, you can tune into all the action this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It'll be on our channel, and as well as that, it will also be on some other community broadcasts, so make sure to show the love throughout all of the people who are going to bring the action to you. But from me, from Kenny, we hope you all have a great rest of your evening, and we'll see you all for CL soon.